Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to the latest Gunners Town podcast. It is a duo today. It is myself and the fabulous Mr. Shewar. Are you Mr. Shewar, Senor Shewar? How do you like to be referred to, Gav?
Gav normally.
Just
You know what I mean?
Gav's fine. Just Gav's fine.
It's just the two of us.
Just the
Just
two
the
of
two
us.
of us.
We can make it. No, we won't. We won't bore people with our horrible non-dulcet tones. Right, as is our modus operandi on this podcast, we do a 30-minute podcast, and I am starting for you, good viewer, the timer now, because we've got a few bits to get through, haven't we, Gav? Even though there's two of us, there's plenty to talk about. The guys last week talked a little bit about Willian, so we'll just do that for like 30 seconds a minute because they talked about most of it. They also talked about the Mesut Ozil stuff, so we won't talk about too much about that, but I would probably just reiterate my personal opinion, which is see if you can find a buyer. If you can't find a buyer because he's on money which is just too ridiculous, then we get ourselves back on the hopefully back on the wagon, and hopefully Mikel Arteta can actually use him, because there's no point in having a 350 grand a week asset that you're just going to bin off, even if you're just using them sparingly in the cup competitions or not as a regular starter. And then we're going to talk a little bit about speculation transfers towards the end, and that sort of stuff. But before we talk about Raul, actually, what I thought I'd do, Gav, is can we just take a couple of minutes, because there's been some news that's come out like literally a couple of hours ago at us, the time of recording on this Wednesday evening that we're doing it, that Piebury Corner has shut. And if you listen to the podcast, but if you don't often go to the games, or you don't get the chance to go to the games, maybe it's because of geography or what have you, you may or may not know about the guys at Piebury Corner. Fantastic little shop, which started as literally, as we were saying before we went on air, Gav, just as a small sort of pie shop, little sort of tiny hole in the wall type thing, which has then evolved into a shop which was on Holloway Road, and then they also opened a shop in King's Cross. And sadly, they've made the announcement today that they're going to be closing, which I think is a real shame, because I don't know about you, how you feel about it, Gav, but from my perspective, I've almost seen it as a bit of a rite of passage. Like, I remember, my dad's not a massive football fan, but I remember the first time in my 20s just saying to him, we're going to a game together, and I told him that there was a pie and mash shop, and he was like, oh, well, we got to go there. And it was almost like it's a rite of passage to be able to get a pie from Piebury Corner. You're a proper Arsenal fan when you've got a pie from Piebury Corner. So just give us some thoughts on your general thoughts around it, Gav, and sad news today.
It is sad. I mean, I've got all the time in the world for Paul and Nikki, Paul's missus at Piebury Corner. I actually came in touch with them, well, blimey, it must have been about 9-10 years ago, and I saw someone comment on their Facebook, and I approached Paul and said, look, I said, I run a quite sizable Facebook page. Let's do a competition, make it a bit of fun, and give somebody away a pie, sort of thing. And so we've done that, and Paul was happy with that. And I remember my fondest memory actually was one of the only members of my family that's not an Arsenal supporter is actually supports Southampton, and he was coming up on the coaches because he goes home and away mental Southampton. He did actually, believe it or not, when he lived with my grandparents and my mum when he got his first job up London. So he used to, because he couldn't go Southampton, he actually used to go Arsenal. So he's got a soft spot for us, and obviously all the families from his and blah 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 blah. So anyway, this one time I said, I'll meet you by the corner of Avenel Road. I said, my mate's got a pie shop. So I've met my cousin, and we've got a couple of cans, and we got some pies, and we literally just sat on the floor. Right, literally sat on the floor and had a couple of cans, had a pie, had a chat with Paul, and then like I say, then when Paul moved over to the place down Holloway Road, another fluke of coincidence is when he was taking off the old signage, underneath it was a sign for a pie shop called Williams Pie and Mash. Now, my mum used to bunk off school and go in there and have a pie and have a milkshake. So when Paul moved into that place, it was almost like the pies are coming back to Islington. It was really sort of like a poignant moment. Really, it was like almost like bringing back on a historical moment, because that was a pie shop in, we're almost talking 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So so like I say, it is a shame. They will be missed. It is a sort of a landmark sort of place to go. Paul and Nicky have been very nice to me over the years. And like I say, I've always got time to go for a beer with Paul. He's the mad Scottish fucker. He's always good value for a beer. Do you know what I mean? And we've had a few mad nights as well. So like I say, I wish them all the best. I hope they Phoenix out of it, which I'm sure they will do. But like I say, it's tough on all of the small businesses around Arsenal. I mean, it's like I say, it's the CAF opposite, which is now getting had 500 mil sponsored by a deal the club have done with Cadbury's.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant. But like I say, all the little businesses in there and the pubs, which depend on a decent amount of payday from football supporters, they're all struggling. So it's a huge. I know you'll join me in saying it's a huge shame.
Yep.
What's happened here, but like I say, fingers crossed. This virus gets resolved and they Phoenix out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully we can see them back up and running again. And like you said, with all of those small businesses that rely on it. And do you know, it's quite easy, isn't it, to as Arsenal fans, on the social medias, spending your time, what happened with the 55 redundancies is tragic, and we all have our opinions about it. But really, it's situations like this that do hit home just how much this situation and just how much the industry and various industries have been hit by this virus. And all we were thinking about, but all I was thinking about was, oh, well, I can't go to the football anymore, and I can't share a pint with the lads anymore, and I can't go to, Duchess anymore, or the Tollington, or wherever it is, or Shea. I can't go to any of those pubs. But actually, the reality is so much more than that. You've got the merchandisers, you've got the program sellers, you've got the food distributors, you've got the pubs, you've got all of these sort of places are being affected. So we just got to keep fingers crossed, because what we want when this all returns back to normal is we want that normality.
We want back to normal. And like I say, the problem is that Islington Council, without getting political over anything really, or too political over it, Islington Council are often dismissive of the income that matchday supporters actually bring into the borough. And I've said this on my previous podcast before they sacked me. Thank you very much, Danny. There's a lot of very, very poor areas in Islington. There's a lot of estates that are very, very poor. We go in on a match day and see people with money in their pockets, and with people spending money on food and blah, 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 blah. But there's a lot of very poor areas, very poor estates in Islington, and a lot of students as well. And these sort of people actually almost depend on, getting their 5 or 6 hours work on a match day. So like I say, it's the local community as well that's suffering. I mean, like Paul will have on a match day at Piebury Corner, 5, 6, 7 local people working there?
Yeah.
And they're all local people. I know, like his boy and his daughter sometimes chip in as well. And obviously Nicky's always there telling Paul what to do, right? But there's, like I say, so you've got to think that there's 5 or 6 people that are missing out on their, even if it's like minimum wage for 6 or 7 hours a week, they're missing out on that as well. And Islington Council have really got to start bearing that in mind. That even though people like yourself and me and our families no longer live in Islington, we still care about the local community, and we still want the local community and the local students to actually get some money in. So, yeah, it's one of those. It's they need support, they need help, and like I say, the Arsenal as a club by the Arsenal Foundation. I think they're doing brilliant.
They're doing a wonderful job. They really, really are. So let's just kick us on a little bit and obviously focus on the club itself. And interestingly, we've just talked about the COVID situation, because if you believe Raul Sanllehi, that's the reason why he left the club. So let's start with that, because this Saturday, I don't know what you were doing, but I was just scrolling through my Twitter feed as usual on a Saturday morning, and suddenly I saw the club statement: Raul Sanllehi is leaving the business effectively immediately. And I don't know about you, but I didn't quite buy the comments in the release from the club and then from Raul Sanllehi that it was all very nicey, and let's all, it's been a great time together, but it's naturally come to its end, all of that. And then Raul, through his personal statement, had said it was COVID related. Do you believe that?
Right. Well, what we've got to say before either of us says anything is the fact that Arsenal have informed a few journalists that if anybody says that Raul was underhand, took a backhander, or there was issues with the Pepe deal, that their lawyers are going to sue them. So I think, for the sake of yourself and Dave, right, we've got to categorically say that this had nothing whatsoever to do with the fact that we paid 72 million quid for Pepe and agents got a large chunk, and it's got nothing categorically to do with everything else. Like I say, we've got to be careful what we fucking say here, mate, really.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I just think basically, I'm not a fan of the director of football style setup. And from how it's turned out with Edu and Arteta and Per, I kind of like that setup, because it's almost like Arteta and Edu are going to have a chat with each other. They're going to target who they want to target, whether that's from personal experience or whether that's from the data monkeys that they're using. But I actually prefer that kind of setup. I don't want a head coach. I want a manager. I want him to say, right, I want that man. I want Willian. I want Louise. You go out and get him. That's what I want. I mean, I don't know how you stand with these modern director of football setups, Chris, because we've never really spoke about it, have we?
No, we haven't. So when Ivan Gazidis, and that name obviously leaves a bad taste in my mouth, because I don't think he was very good for Arsenal in any way, shape or form. But when he was in charge, you had a clear delineation of power. There was a man in charge, and he was supposed to bring in a structure post-Wenger, which was supposed to work. And you had Sven, who was Mr. Scout, and you had Raul, who was Mr. Fixer, as I know a couple of other podcasts have said as well. And then you had someone like Vinay, who was working with the commercial side of the business, and you've got other people and all of that sort of stuff. When Ivan Gazidis left, perhaps too early, but to be honest with you, I was happy he was gone at the time, in my personal opinion. It left that power vacuum, and what they filled it with just didn't work, in my opinion. I didn't think that it didn't make sense to have two people at the top.
I didn't think the structure worked. I didn't think the structure that they set up worked. But to say that Gazidis actually did anything would hurt me in the back of my throat, because I don't think I think he stole a living, Chris, and no one will ever persuade me otherwise. But how they sort of replaced it was, you can't have two bosses, mate. You can't have that's it. You can't have two bosses.
It didn't work, did it? So, and that was my issue. So I'm not a fan of Gazidis, but it felt a little bit more simplified. And in theory, that approach should have worked. I mean, perhaps if we'd have had a different, better chief executive, that could have worked, because it became clear to me that there was a power struggle, and that's why we saw Sven left. That was over a year ago now, but Sven Mislintat left, quite quickly, when it seemed that the club weren't going to be adopting the exact approach that he was led to believe. So you've got Sven Mislintat that's left. You've then got the question mark. I mean, people have made question marks. As we said, we are not making any links here between any deals that have been done. But it's fair to say that publicly, lots of fans have questioned the influence of agents, whether that's agents like Kia Drabchin, Arturo Canales, or I think that's how you're saying his name. And it didn't sit right with people. But what I think, from my perspective, if I look back on Raul's time in charge, there was a couple of things that he'd said, one of which was we were not going to run down players' contracts anymore. Well, that's clearly not happened. Yeah. And the second thing was we're going to be smarter in the market. Now, I'm not an expert, but if you haven't got money to just chuck at big signings like the Cities and the Uniteds and the PSGs of this world, then you need to find the kind of deals that we're seeing the German teams pick up, or the French teams pick up.
Like I say, I mean, don't you think that I thought we had a pretty decent summer transfer window.
What, last year?
I mean, yeah, and I'm probably quoted as saying it was a 9 out of 10 transfer window, but like I say, due to, I mean, you could even bring in the Ozil kind of scenario there, and Emery losing his way completely big time. He completely fell off a cliff. But like I say, I mean, if you think, look, Martinez and Pepe, I think Pepe will have a better season next year.
100%.
I thought we had a fairly decent transfer window last year, but we didn't necessarily have the structure. And the problem you've got is, again, a lot of people are going to want to completely hammer Emery, but the setup with that was the director of football strategy, and there were so many rumours last year with Sahar from Palace, and there was a little bit of discontent amongst the fan base, and they wanted to. There was this need and this urge to get a big name, big spend signing in, which was Pepe, and it's unfair to judge Pepe, and it's unfair to judge any player on the amount that they actually cost us. But it was just one of those. I mean, it was just a bad setup. Now, hopefully, what we've got now and what we're left with is Arteta almost dictating to Edu, and that's what I want to see. I want to see a manager, and I want to see Arteta there for the next 10 years.
Yeah. Do you think, Gav? Sorry to interrupt. Just a quick question. Do you think if we were to rewind in time and Arteta's the manager last summer, do you think that Pepe deal gets done? Do you think all of these deals get done? And it's a bit of a difficult one for me to, I guess, articulate, because I guess what I'm saying is I feel like Arteta has more leverage and more power than Emery did. I think what's helped that is the FA Cup, because, in our fans' eyes now, hold on a second, we've got a guy that's only been here 5 minutes and he's already delivered a trophy for us. Imagine, and then you start to project, don't you? Imagine what happens in 18 months. Imagine what happens in 2 years if he's been able to do what he wants to do. I don't know about you, but I'm getting excited as a fan, and I'm thinking in 2 years' time, if he has his own way, we could be fighting for a title. Maybe that's a silly pipe dream. But do you think if we hadn't done the Pepe deal last summer, let's just say that same deal is coming up now, do you think we go and get Pepe for that sort of money? Do you think we get him for less money? Do you even think we get him at all?
Ooh, I would certainly suggest that we wouldn't be getting him for the money that we got him for. But like I say, I mean, it's Arteta has obviously come in and said he wanted to be his own man, and I think Arteta may have as much to do with Real leaving as anybody else in the club. Because he's almost making his position redundant. The fact that he's won the FA Cup only strengthens his position, and the fact that he's already got friends in the club, he must have a very good relationship with Ken Fryer. We can't obviously not dismiss the role that Tim Lewis is going to be playing. Whether Tim Lewis works out to be a good thing or a bad thing, who knows? But he's definitely the Kroenke's boy on the board. He's their 24/7 man in the club now, and I'm hoping that him and Arteta and him and Adu, and obviously include Per as well, have got a really, really good relationship and a really good, strong understanding. So hopefully, if them can they can do their jobs between them, we we could start improving, and we could start. We could hopefully. I mean, like I say, we all want to, as much as we all slagged off top four ain't a trophy. We all want top four next year. Yeah. Everybody wants top four next year because it's a sign of improvement. So, but I mean, I don't know how you see it. I mean, how do you see Tim Lewis fitting into the structure, Chris?
So I think that, and do you know what? I only found out this today. I didn't know Tim Lewis was an actual Arsenal fan. So that gave me quite a bit of heart, actually, to be fair. I mean, it shouldn't really make a lot of difference because he's in a business position, but it gave me a bit of heart to know that he's a big Arsenal fan. So that's positive. I think that's a good move from the Cronkies. They've got an experienced guy in from Clifford Chance who's going to act as a talking piece. That's probably not the right word,
well,
but almost.
He's their mouthpiece. He's their. Yeah. He's going to be, because they with the COVID and all that, they can't be running over every month in their private jets. So basically, he's their boy.
He's the voice of KSE.
He's their boy
on the ground, and then you've also got Arteta, who's clearly a stronger character than Emery, because Arteta and Josh Kroenke's already said how he speaks to Arteta regularly. So the Kroenkes have got that almost the belief in Arteta, and that trophy will have made a big difference probably to them as well, looking at from afar. So there's more. The lines of communications feel a little bit more open than they were under Raul. Do you think that? I mean, just give me your general opinion. Like, will you look back on Raul's time and think it's been a success?
I think he had a good summer transfer window.
Yeah,
but I've never really sort of particularly warmed to him or understood quite what his role was. And I've got a question for you that I want to throw you back at. Right?
Yeah, go on.
Do you think that Arteta came into the club wanting to be his own man, which is something that he sort of almost insisted on? Because obviously we know that there was protracted talks between Arteta and the club before he was actually announced. Whereas do you think that Emery wanted a job so badly that he took any terms?
Maybe. I mean, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. I think so. There's a couple of bits here. Like, what's playing around in my head is, number one, Arteta hadn't managed a single football team before. Everyone has spoken so highly of him in the game. I know Dave Seeger of this parish, of this Gunnerstown parish, has said how he's spoken to a few people, coaches, who have said amazing things about Arteta under Guardiola. And we know that the influence that he's had. So I think he knew that he had a bit of leverage, but not loads of leverage. But I think that has literally flipped since the second he walked in through the front door and he started changing things. But also he's had that validation of that cup now, that his stock, it's not just sort of risen, it's almost doubled, tripled, quadrupled, because he can now, even if they'd have been very different, he'd have been able to say, right, the situation that we're in now, I have proven to you that I can deliver trophies. I have proven to you that I can turn the club around. So it doesn't matter if when I arrived, I might have had to make some concessions or what have you.
Yeah,
he's done it now.
Let's be honest. Yeah.
He's done it now. So my gut feel is that this summer, what's happened over the last since lockdown has effectively enabled the goalpost to be moved a bit, which is probably for the better, because he's going to now be going into this window and thinking, actually, I'm calling a few more of the shots now. And with Raul gone as well, and Edu, I think there's a bit of pressure on Edu, but he's not the same person as Raul, is he? I don't know that he's got the same connections. So they're going to rely on each other quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, Edu's sort of got a deliver in the South American market, and Edu's got the umphers. He knows all the Brazilian players. He knows all the Brazilian kids. So, like I say, that's why we've probably been linked to a few people that I've never heard of who are Brazilian. Yeah. But I almost think now that Edu is almost a little, between Edu and Tim Lewis, they're going to be almost Arteta's fixers. So, we're not really in a situation we are with a head coach and a director of football with sort of Arteta's almost like a hybrid now. He's almost like a hybrid head coach stroke manager, which is a situation that I actually prefer. I'm not in favour of how clubs like Barca, PSG, and etc. do it, where they've got a director of football who buys the players and expects the manager to fit them in. If the manager doesn't know what he needs, you're screwed.
Yeah,
because he's got to know, hasn't he? Do you know what I mean? And in saying that, like I say, what I would like to say to you, Chris, right, is, and I'll throw a question at you, is we've bought a couple of kids for the under 23s over this week. We got the fella off Tottenham, the fella off Huddersfield, and we've got a Norwegian fella.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that means that a lot of our players like Saka, Maitland-Niles, Willock, etc., is that the hole that because they've progressed quicker, is that the hole they're trying to fill, or are these players for the future?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think so. I wrote a piece a few years ago, basically calling the youth setup a bit of a cash cow, because if you are a big club like Arsenal, you can bring players into your top facilities, you can train them up, you can send them out on loan a couple of times, and if they don't make it into the first team, you've paid them a nominal wage, but then you're getting 3, 4, 5, 6 million quid for them. Now, that was a good 5 years ago, I think I wrote that piece, but I don't think my view has changed. I think that Arsenal have, you're absolutely spot on, they have elevated some of those younger players who are now essentially established first teamers, so they've got a bit of a gap. And if you think about what the club have been doing in terms of the scouting network and things like that, they've openly said, I think, that they're targeting that kind of under 23s style player that's maybe 17, 18, that type of age, rather than go for the 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds. They're really focusing on that age just before they reach the first team. If you can get in those types of players, get them out on loan, they either then make it, or if they don't make it, you sell them on for a bit of a profit. So to me, that kind of makes a bit of sense. It's taking a punt. It's a low risk punt that might work. But I think you and I both know, and certainly you talked to Woz about this, again, also of this Gunnerstown parish, and he'll tell you that the number of players that come up from the youth team that actually get into the first team and establish themselves as good, excellent pros for Arsenal, you can count them on one hand in the last decade. So I think it's more of a take a punt on players. They might make it, they might not, they might make us some money. That's my kind of view of it, and it's all money that goes back into the coffers, which actually brings me, because we're reaching the last few minutes of today's podcast, and I know you don't really like talking about transfers, so I've saved it just for the last 2.5 minutes.
I'll tell you what, you do ins, I'll do outs.
So Gralis to Napoli, thoughts on that, because that's emerged today?
Yeah, no, if that happens, yeah, all good. We know we've got to sell players. We know we've got to get some income. If that happens, thank you very much for your service. You've done okay. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, and the rumours are that it's this merry-go-round, isn't it? So what's supposedly happening at the moment is you've got Koulibaly, who is at Napoli. Supposedly Man City want to buy him. If they get that money, they want to go after Gabriel I think it's Mahales from he's Brazilian, so I've probably butchered his name, so apologies any Brazilians listening, from Lille. Arsenal are apparently on the verge of making that one an official thing. If you listen to the rumours, he's a left-sided centre-back that makes sense. But I put something out today because what I don't understand is we went out and got Pablo Mari literally 7 months ago, if you like, on loan. We've made that loan permanent. I understand that we need to improve our defensive setup, but you're looking at it now, you've got Mustafi who's injured, so that's going to be difficult to sell. You've got Chambers who's injured, so that's going to be difficult to sell. We've got Saliba who's just joined. You've got Luiz who's just joined. You've got Holding, who's just played in the cup final. You've got this Mahalis as well. I'm looking at those numbers and I'm thinking, it's not adding up here. I'm looking at someone like maybe Chambers. Is he going to move on? But for me, he's got more versatility, so I would keep him. Holding's the one that I'm not sure, because he's 25 years old. I don't think he's blessed with the best amount of pace. I thought he was okay in the cup final, but not great. But that was a symptomatic of the player that he is. So my view, and I'd be interested to get your view here, would you, if we're going to cash in on Sokratis, maybe we won't get hardly any money from him, but it's just freeing up space. Would you also move Holding on, or would you keep him?
See, this is the problem. And like I say, I mean, I've Kino's wrote a very good blog about this a couple of days ago for the website. And I mean, I'm literally just reading out what he said because I've got it in front of me because I knew this was coming up. Right, we've got 4 senior central defenders in Louise, Sabaya, Gabriel, and Mari. Right, Mustafi and Chambers are both going to be out. I believe Chambers might be back September, October. Right, but if he's not fully fit by the transfer window on the 4th of October, then we've got no chance of flogging him. So we've got Mustafi and Chambers that we have to keep along with the other 4. The problem is that leaves Sokratis and Holding. And so we've got 8 at the moment. And literally, I mean, Louise has just signed a new contract. Gabriel and Amari, fairly new in. Sabia new in. So if we're going to cash in on centre-backs at the moment where we are sort of overpopulated, it's going to be Sokratis and Holding. There's literally no logical, there's no choice around it. I mean, unless we've signed Louise to get a transfer fee by selling him, which would be mental. Who's going to pay for him?
Well, you never know. I saw something about him going into France, but we'll park that one for now because it's purely just speculation. And I think I agree with you. I agree with Keno's as well. I can't quite see how Rob Holding fits in if we're signing this left-sided centre-back. The only question mark, I guess you could say, is if Arteta is going to more permanently put 3 at the back. Because ideally you want to say, well, you want 4 or 5 centre halves then for the start of the season. If you're going to play 3 at the back every single week, but I'm not sure he will, because I think Arteta's going to rotate it quite a lot. So if he's going to play 4 at the back for 2/3 of the season, then you don't need 5, 6 centre halves, do you? So, but it all depends really. We're going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the other thing of Kieran. Is quite confident and quite happy to be playing as a left-sided centre-back as well. So, I mean, you've got another one to add into the mix. I mean, obviously, you want to see him as an attacking sort of left fullback, really. But you've got that as well. But if we do buy another centre-back, I would say it's pretty obvious that Arteta's favourable setup is going to be 3 at the back. And obviously, with our injury record we've had over the years, mate, we're probably going to need about 12 centre-backs to make it through the season.
It feels like our squad wouldn't be big enough if there were 40 of them that were all just sitting there. It's like an American football team. Listen, we have literally just hit the 30-minute mark. That's flown by far too quickly. There's lots more we could have talked about, but hopefully we'll be back, guys. If you're listening to this time next week, I don't know who it'll be. We'll have to see from the lads who's available, but that'll be a pre-mental. This isn't it, Gav? It'll be a pre-Community Shield Cup final. Is it a cup final with the Community Shield? Season opener, I think we call it.
Yeah. So. Well, I mean, for want of going on another rant here, I don't understand why we're playing in a charity game when a huge bulk of the charity money was coming from fans inside the ground. So I don't quite understand why they're even holding this this year. Like I say, especially, I don't understand it. I mean, let's hope we smashed the Scousers anyway.
Yeah.
But so I don't quite understand why they're holding it, and yeah, we'll go from there, won't we? Do you know what I mean?
Well,
and then when does the season start?
It's the 12th of September. So we start 12th of September. So it's 29th of August is the Community Shield, and then 2 weeks later is the 12th of September. And that
Why is it the week after?
I think there's
why are we not playing it? Why are we not playing it on the 5th?
I think there's a international weekend most likely, but don't quote me on that, listener or viewer or whatever you are. We are out of time for today. Gav, as always, thank you very much for joining me, sir.
No, it's been a pleasure, mate. Like I say, I've been delighted to be joining you boys for the back end of this season, and like I say, we'll do some good stuff over the next year. Do you know what I mean? We've got some good boys who are going to come on.
We're going to have some very good stuff. We're going to have some very good chats. We're looking forward to the season ahead. But from me, from Gav, it's thank you very much. And we will see you next time on the Gunnerstown podcast. Bye-bye.
Up the Arsenal.
Up the Arsenal.